It's time now for Movie Spotlight, your weekly ticket to the world of film, from the hottest blockbusters to hidden indie gems and everything in between. And joining us today in the studio are our resident movie critics, Darcy Paquet. Hello, Darcy.
Hi, Alana.
And Jason Bechervaise. Welcome, Jason.
Hello, Alana.
Now, Jason, your pick today is the Korean melodrama, Even If This Love Disappears from the World Tonight. I'm going to leave the Korean title to you. I don't want to butcher it. It's also so long.
I know, right?
It's based on a Japanese novel.
That's right. So it's sourced from this Japanese novel, the same name, by Misaki Ishijo, that was also adapted into a Japanese melodrama a few years ago in 2022. That movie was actually really popular. It sold over 1 million tickets. And there was also a stage musical last year. And so, yeah, a further example, I think, of one source multi-use IP, so intellectual property, which is a current buzzword you hear a lot in the local content industry, often relating to webtoons. But here, yeah, we have a novel, and I'll talk a bit more about the production company in a second. And it's been, adapted into a Japanese movie. And here we have a Korean adaptation. So it follows I confess I've not read the novel or watched the Japanese film, but it does seem to follow the original story pretty closely. It follows a high school student called Soyun, played by Shin-sia, who loses her memory every day. She's suffering a form of amnesia following a car accident, and she starts dating Jaewon, played by Chu Young-woo, who attends the same school. But it's funny how they kind of start dating. They don't really know each other that well. And she sets out these conditions, one of which is, for them not to actually fall in love. But come on, this is a Korean melodrama.
I already know where this is going.
We know exactly where it's going. And so behind the scenes, Jaewon is replacing her lost memories each day. But without giving too much away, he's also got some health issues. It's directed by Kim Hye, who won Best New Director at the Blue Dragon Awards, I think I think it was a few months ago, wasn't it? And then, for her immensely enjoyable and heartwarming It's Okay, that also deals with, there's a car accident in that film, I think. There's just so many accidents in Korean movies. So the impact that an accident can have on one's life. And that film, It's Okay, along with this new film, Even If This Love Disappears from the World Tonight, is distributed and it's produced by this studio called By 4 AM. And they were involved, I didn't know this until I was researching the film, they were also involved in the Japanese production, so they acquired the rights to adapt it and this new film as well. So it's an interesting time for that company because they've been behind a number of hits. We haven't seen many hits in the Korean film industry, but they were involved in Noise, The Match, Firefighters. So despite all the doom and gloom, there's this company, there's this studio that seems to be bucking the trend. And this film, as we'll discuss, is actually doing quite well.
Well, so we've got grief, we've got illness, tragedy, we've got the good-looking leads, we're joking, but these are all the ingredients for the quintessential Korean melodrama.
Oh, yeah, and more. When I was watching this movie, a film that quickly came to mind was A Moment to Remember, starring Son Ye-jin and Jung Woo-sun, that character. The Son Ye-jin character, she suffers from early set on Alzheimer's. And, it's Darcy's written about in his wonderful essay on Christmas in August. When it comes to this Korean melodramas, illness is a familiar trope. These characters get sick and it deals with, how they struggle with their illness, but also, the people they leave behind. This movie's a little bit different, I would say, in that something happens in the final chapter, which I won't go into. But these films are resonating particularly with young viewers. Actually, I was really tired yesterday and I was like, do I have to see this film? And I went to the theatre and I was like, oh my goodness, I'm really old. I stand out. I feel incredibly uncomfortable. But it was a joyous occasion because, people are saying people don't go to the theatre.
Yeah.
And actually, no, people are going to the theatre and young people are going to the theatre. And they're watching these melodramas. Hear Me Out, someone did really well, Secret Untold Melody, both of which remakes. The original films were Taiwanese movies. And so this is a genre, and if you go into some of the sites where it actually looks at the demographic, the ages of people watching these films, they're in their teens and in their 20s. So something's happening, and I know that, everyone says the film industry is in an existential crisis. Yes, it is, but there are these glimmers of hope. And although I do have some issues with this film, I'm glad that it's resonating with young people.
It's great to see theatres packed, I'm sure. And given that this is a remake, Jason, do you think this is a trend that's set to continue?
I do, because we've seen remakes quite a bit in Korean cinema, and not just over the last couple of years or so. There's this trend has been fairly consistent over the last 15 years. Or
feels
longer.
Like every week we're talking about a remake.
Yeah, so many years ago we had Cold Eyes, which is a remake of the Hong Kong movie Eye in the Sky, which is great. There's Believer, My Intimate Strangers, Pilot. Last year was Pilot and Handsome Guys, both remakes. And I talked about a couple of the melodramas, Hear Me, Our Summer Secret, Untold Melody. They're also remakes. Mm-hmm. And so, Korean directors have found ways to make them work for local audiences. And so I think with this movie, I think it captures two things that I think are interesting. One is that melodramas are connecting with young people. And I think we're going to see that trend continue. And actually, I didn't get to mention, there's another melodrama out this week called Once We Were Us by director Kim Hye, so featuring Gu Gye-wan and Moon Ga-yeon. And so I haven't seen that, but some of the ratings seem pretty strong, and it opened with, I think, it sold 100,000 tickets yesterday. So that clearly is a trend at the moment. And also, the remakes, which I think, we're going to see more of those for sure.
Darcy, did you have a chance to catch Even If This Love Disappears from the world tonight?
I did. I like that the film is willing to go into kind of sad places. It doesn't hold back in that sense. And and it does. It feels kind of like a full circle moment because 20 years ago, this kind of film was really at the mainstream of Korean cinema. Yep. And as time has gone on, the focus has shifted to thrillers and blockbuster movies and all other kinds of movies. And there have been few directors who have kind of persisted with making this type of movie. On TV it's a bit different, but I think that there is still an audience for this type of film, and we're not seeing a lot of original Korean melodramas come out these days. But the fact that there are these stories that have been really successful in other countries, in other film industries, I think that gives producers enough confidence that they can remake it here and then it'll do well. And so I'd be quite happy to see kind of a new melodrama trend. Come to the theaters.
Yeah, absolutely. This movie, it's slick. It's very beautiful to look at. The set design is terrific. And of course the leads are very attractive and the music's very effective. So, it ticks all those boxes. And it's a bit long, I felt. I think it could have been 90 minutes instead of, was it an hour and 45 minutes or something? But I think it's effective, and if it's bringing audiences into the theatre, then I'm all for it, even if I have some issues with these movies. And I do have a soft spot for melodramas, and it's great to be in a theatre full of people.
Well, from a contemporary Korean melodrama that's clearly striking a chord with younger audiences, we're now heading to a very different direction. Darcy, this week you're recommending a French film shot by a well-known American director about a legendary French movie. Nouvelle Vague is the latest work by director Richard Linklater, famous for his Before Sunrise films as well as many other contemporary classics. With this film, he has gone to Paris, right?
Yes, it's true. The title means French New Wave in English. And this film is set during that film movement in the early 1960s, where you had a group of young filmmakers who were kind of in the process of transforming French cinema and making these films that are now classics. That was kind of an unusual time period because it started with a film magazine. There was this film magazine, Cahiers de Cinéma, and the critics who were writing in this film magazine kept writing about how French cinema needed to do something new and to create new kinds of films. And eventually they just said, well, we're going to do it. So all of them became filmmakers, and many of them went on to become all-time great filmmakers. This movie focuses in particular on Jean-Luc Godard and the shooting of his debut film Breathless, which was released in 1960. It was shot the year before. Godard was the most radical of these young critics, and also the last one to make his debut as a director. And so the film, it sticks pretty close to what actually happened. And so, it presents a lot of these historical details in a quite accurate way. So it's a movie about the making of a movie.
It's a film about film history. Darcy, do you think it's going to mostly appeal then to cinephiles?
It is a bit niche in that sense. I think it's possible to enjoy the film if you haven't seen the original or if you're not that familiar with French cinema. But, if you have that background information, it kind of adds a lot more to your experience. There are a huge number of famous film people who kind of briefly appear in the film, and
Roberto Rossellini.
Yeah. And each time they come, there's the little caption that appears to let you know who they are.
Okay.
And if you know who Robert Bresson is and what kind of films he makes, then the conversation that he has with Godard is interesting. That much more interesting. That being said, I think the general point is fairly easy to follow. And Godard sets out to make a film by kind of destroying everybody's assumptions about how it is that you make a film, the proper way to shoot a film. And so it's a film about artistic rebellion. It's a film about risks to a certain extent, and trying to think in a completely new way. And then just also being kind of a rebel in every sense.
Now, this seems like quite an interesting choice by the director, Richard Linklater. How does this film fit into his broader career?
Yeah, I think even listeners who may not know his name, I think will be familiar with his films. He's made 24 features up until now. He made the Before Sunrise film and its sequels, Dazed and Confused, School of Rock, A Scanner Darkly, Boyhood. And, his own first feature to be released in theaters, Slackers, has, I think, a lot in common with Breathless. It was shot on a really low budget. It was really informal in the way that the film was made and shot. And it's become this iconic film in itself as well. I think Richard Linklater, throughout his career, he's also kind of experimented with new ways of making films. And so Boyhood famously was shot over 12 years. The Before Sunrise films are very much a collaboration with his actors. And so I think it makes sense that he'd be attracted to this particular story. It's a little bit ironic because, he's making a film about this really radical movie from the 60s. And, the way he shoots this film is kind of more conventional. It is black and white. He does shoot it in French.
Interesting.
And so in that sense, it looks different from his other films. But, the storytelling itself, I think he just wanted to focus on what happened rather than to call attention to his own style.
Mm-hmm. And how are you rating it overall, Darcy?
There's not a lot of drama in the film. If you know that the movie, became really famous. And so when he has these arguments with people, you already know that he's basically going to win the argument.
Okay.
In the long run, because this film is going to become so famous. But it still does keep your attention. I don't think Godard would have liked it, but I'm not sure that matters. I think, especially if, you are someone who has an interest in old French movies, I think it's really fun to watch.
Jason, sounds like you got to see it as well. What did you think?
Yeah, I did. It's kind of fun, actually. I studied a lot of these filmmakers when I was at university, so it was a bit nostalgic for me. But bring it to the present, I'm teaching students about Korean cinema and the 386 generation and the rule breakers that they are. And I was like, well, that's what was going on in France as well in the 1960s. Just throwing the rule book, out the window and just doing, what God wants, right? And, if it means just well, I was going to swear, but if it means angering everybody, he doesn't care, right? He has fights with his producers, and then later calls them friends, and it's really funny. And then you just say, yeah, that's it for today, and what, and just walks out, and you know they're all a bit frustrated and confused, but he ends up putting together this masterpiece, and yeah, I mean, you kind of need to be familiar with the filmmakers for this to be, I suppose. Yeah, it's going to be might be enjoyable if you're not familiar with it, but I mean, there are just so many figures in there that if you know them, you can take so much more from the movie.
Right.
Inside jokes.
Yeah. So it's kind of it's a movie for movie geeks.
Now, lastly, Darcy, before we wrap up, this is not the only film by Richard Linklater made this year. Can you briefly tell us about the other one?
Yeah, I'm really excited about this other one too. It's called Blue Moon. It's about the lyricist Lawrence Hart, who wrote the lyrics to a lot of famous films, including Blue Moon. And it's mostly set in a single night on the premiere of the musical Oklahoma, which Hart himself was not part of, but his longtime collaborator was, Rogers, who made Oklahoma together with Hammerstein, and they would go on to become this, really famous team. And so it's interesting. It's another movie about a talented artist, like a real life artist, but in this case, someone whose career maybe just is passing its peak, and he checked out at this point where his partner's going on to become incredibly successful, and he's not. It stars Ethan Hawke and Margaret Qualley, and yeah, it's being received really well in the US, so I'm looking forward to its Korean release.
And not in French and not in black and white.
No, this one we can watch in English.
Quite the opposite. That wraps up this week's Movie Spotlight. Thank you, as always, to both our film critics for joining us. Darcy Paquet, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And Jason Bechervaise, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.